Good morning, good morning. And by that I mean, what is actually good? We're going to talk a little bit about MMA, preview of some upcoming fights. Now, there are two big fights that are coming up that I am particularly excited about, being Jones versus Gustafsson, and the sleeper, the one that I think people will not be as knowledgeable about but should, Israel Adesanya versus Anderson Silva. Now, for John Jones versus Gustafsson 2, that's going to be a very interesting fight because the fight fan populace all believed that Jones was placed in his most tough situation. That some even argue that Alexander Gustafsson won the fight. I watched the fight recently, and although Alexander Gustafsson was impressive, I did believe that the judges got it right in giving the win to John Jones. Even further, a lot of people have been thinking that this fight was like a split decision or close. It was a unanimous decision. Three judges scored it 48-47, and one judge scored it 49-46 for John Bones Jones. However, perception's reality, and when people were talking about this fight, they were just so engaged in the fact that John Jones almost lost, because John Jones seems invincible. He's a champion, not technically currently, but he only lost once, and it was due to the disqualification. He's never been subdued by an opponent, and that was the closest we were able to see John Jones be subdued. John Jones is great. His fight IQ is awesome. His genetics, crazy good. And his intelligence inside the octagon and his skill set are just unmatched that we have seen thus far. The interesting thing about Gustafsson is that Gustafsson brings in somebody with a similar body type to John Jones. So, because usually John Jones uses his length to his advantage, which he should, but Gustafsson challenges John Jones with that. And I don't know if Jones has faced Jones-like competition in the octagon. Usually they're shorter, their wingspans are shorter, and he's able to do his will. Now, come this fight, based on what I'm seeing, I think Jones is going to win. I think Jones is going to beat Gustafsson again, and it'll be in a more dominant fashion. The reason why I'm saying this is because, you know, looking at the press conference and looking at Gustafsson's performances since then, nothing to take away from Gustafsson. He's one of the best in the world, but he's treating the fight as if he won the previous bout. Like, he shows little respect for John Jones, which, you know, is good from an athletic standpoint. But at the same time, I think you have to realize that you lost, you lost, and you have a chip on your shoulder, and you want to prove that you are victorious. Contrary to the actual result, Jones has the chip on his shoulder. He doesn't have the respect that he rightfully deserves for winning that fight. Gustafsson does. So Gustafsson's coming in with his ego with like, oh yeah, I can beat John Jones. Can you really? Because you didn't the first time. So it's really interesting to see if that he will be able to actually beat John Jones when it comes to a decision or a submission or knocking him out. But my money is on John Jones. You know why? Because he is basically like an underdog when he's been nothing but dominant in this competition, the UFC. And he's only getting better and better. He's getting stronger and stronger. And I think with John Jones, there's a lot of arguments that Jones wasn't even focused with the Gustafsson fight initially, like he was partying and not really like taking Gustafsson too seriously. And I say that with a grain of salt. He's the best in the world. Whatever he does is obviously working. But when it comes to this one, I know for a fact Jones is not going to accept anything but perfection when it comes to his camp. And he's going to make it his mission to make it a dominant performance against Gustafsson. Jones is one of those guys where, like, once he makes a decision and mind up and finds that motivation, like, he'll be unstoppable. And because of the perception of his fight initially, he has that motivation. And when you're a champion, especially for as long as John Jones has been, finding motivation is tough, you know? Like, when you're the best in the world, like, who challenges you, who seeks you, makes you go to that next level? And it really is, like, with all of the press and stuff, that I think Jones will be motivated, even way more so than he was against DC, to finish off Alexander Gustafsson and put this chapter behind him. So let me know what you think about Jones versus Gustafsson 2. In the next video, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think is the sleeper of an upcoming fight, which is Anderson Silva versus Israel Adesanya.